Helmut Marko, the pirate with a wooden leg, a glass eye, and a mean face in Formula One, or would he be Lord Voldemort? The career hammer for several drivers, a man who holds and releases within the Red Bull program. Right-hand man of Dietrich Matezchitz, co-founder of Red Bull and the one who envisioned the Formula One team. He was called to structure something that was once sponsor of Sauber. It became a partner and would later become a separate team when they bought Jaguar. But more than that, a talented driver with impressive results who had a career cut short by an accident, a stone in the eye. Marko is undoubtedly a very interesting figure, and he is who we are going to talk about today on Splash and Go. Real Multimarca is one of the most interesting figures in current Formula One. Whether we like him or not, and despite the nonsense, he talks day in and day out. There's no denying that he has his merits. And among the big shots in today's Formula One, he is one of the most important. He has been acting as an advisor for Red Bull since the team's formation. In fact, even before that, and he is part of the core decision-making team of the squad. He has given more orders in the past, it's true, but he remains very influential. He's not a principal like Christian Horner at Red Bull, Toto Wolff at Mercedes, or Fred Vasseur at Ferrari, and he doesn't design cars either, like Adrian Newey and several other names, but in any case, he participates in the direction of the category. Born on April 27, 1943, in a small town, I think it's called Gröming. The editor will tell us how it is in Austrian. Marko was a schoolmate of another notable Austrian, Jochen Rindt, the only posthumous champion in Formula One history who won the title in 1970 after he had already passed away. He graduated in law and has a doctorate in legal sciences from the University of Graz in 1967. In 1967, and that's where it comes from. The reference, I think it's the title that is said Dr. Marko, because he is a doctor. He has a doctorate. He owns 4 hotels in the city. I have no idea how to pronounce these. Google Translate will tell us too. Lent Hotel, Schlossberg Hotel, Augarten Art Hotel, Kaisers und Zeiss. After completing his doctorate, what a great example of a guy, he decided to change the course of his career to go into motorsport. He had success in touring car races at the end of the 60s in Europe, and in the early 70s, he entered the world of endurance racing, the long-duration races. In 70, he raced in the 24 Hours of Le Mans for the first time with a Porsche 908, sharing the car with Woody Abtelins, another Austrian. They are 3rd overall and win in their category or class, as endurance racing fans like to say. The following year, he has even more success again with Porsche, but aboard the magnificent 917K with the beautiful Martini livery. He wins overall, alongside without the slightest chance of pronouncing that name. That year, in fact, Marko's Porsche and his teammate with the difficult name set a distance record of 5,130 kilometers in the 24 hours. 35 kilometers, an average speed of 222 kilos per hour over the total of 24 hours, which would stand until 2010. In 72, he competed in another legendary race and once again made his mark with speed, the Targa Florio. The Targa Florio is a traditional race that took place on the roads of Sicily, that little island down at the toe of the boot, which is Italy. The race existed between 1906 and 1972. And if you really want, I can make a separate video just about it. Comment down below. This race, in fact, was part of the World Sports Prototype Championship from 1955 to 1972, when it had its last edition. And it was in that last edition, aboard an Alfa Romeo 33, that he really made his mark. Marko went down the coast. The race had 11 laps around a circuit that was 72 kilometers long, so about 840 kilometers in total, called Piccolo del Madoni. I think that's how you say it. Help us out with the production editor, Little Madonna. He set the fastest lap and at the end of the race reduced a 2-minute deficit to just 17 seconds at the finish line. The average speed established was 128 km/h. All of this on a circuit through the back roads of Sicily, passing right through towns. 2 months later, Marko makes his debut in Formula One at the German Grand Prix. And if you're not connecting one thing to another, back then, the German Grand Prix meant the Nordschleife, the huge circuit in the forest with over 200 turns and 22 kilometers in length. He finished the 71 season aboard a private March 7C, and in 72, he raced for BRM. But his career in Formula One wouldn't last long, because at the Grand Prix in France, in Clermont-Ferrand, he suffers an accident that would end his time as a driver, at least in Formula One. A stone is thrown by a Lotus car, piercing his visor and leaving him without one of his eyes. For many, many years, and you can find this information all over the internet, they attributed the stone incident to Lotus from Emerson Fittipaldi. But it wasn't too long ago. And here in Interlagos, Fittipaldi went to greet and chat a bit with Marko in the paddock of the São Paulo Grand Prix. The topic came up, and Marko clarified. It wasn't you, it was Peter, Emerson's teammate in the other Lotus. And if Marko himself is saying it, who are we to argue? The end of his days as a driver led Marko to return to his hometown. Is that how you say it? Thanks. Where he dedicated himself to restaurants, hotels, and real estate. Where I researched, I found information saying that Marko is very good at making money. But his career in motorsport wouldn't be over, because from then on he would manage drivers. It's just that being associated today, Helmut Marko was already involved in Formula One, and it wasn't always a guarantee of success back then. So maybe he was just unlucky, because 3 of Marko's drivers at that time lost their lives. On the tracks, Helmut Koenig died at the 1974 United States Grand Prix, and Hans-Georg Berger and Marco Horner, the 2 lost their lives in Formula 2 races. His first success story, let's say, was with Gerhard Berger. He is also Austrian and very well known to us here in Brazil, also known as Gerhard, a friend of Ayrton Senna. But Marko's proximity to fatal accidents, or very close to them, wouldn't have ended there, because Berger in '89 was close to dying at Imola, and Karl Wendlinger, another Austrian, another one he managed, also had a close call in Monaco in 1994. In the 90s, RSN Marko, a team involved in Formula 3 and Formula 3000, won several races and clinched the championship. There, names like Juan Pablo Montoya, Ricciardo, Marko, Henrique Bernoulli, and Jorge Miller passed through. And it was as a team principal in Formula 3000 that he would meet a guy who would become his business partner, someone we know with whom he would have contact for the first time. He mentions in an interview that the guy came to buy a used trailer from him, Christian Horner. Horner had also tried to be a driver, and at one point in the 90s, he jumped to the other side of the counter. And he will be the team principal in Formula 3000. The name of his team was Arden. So what happened? He mentioned in an interview on the official Formula One podcast, Beyond the Grid. When I had a team, I needed to buy a trailer at some point. And then, an Austrian, also a team owner, was advertising a used trailer in the city of Grande in Austria. I had no idea who he was, but he seemed like a pretty straightforward guy. I agreed to the price. He told me he would deliver it in a week, but that the payment had to be made up front. I went back home and borrowed money from the bank. My dad was traveling, and I made the payment up front. When my dad got back from his trip, he asked, "Did you already pay? Where's the trailer?" And Horner's dad said, "You bought a trailer from a guy in Austria that you don't know, and he paid up front. And he's only going to pick it up next week. You're an idiot." The trailer arrived. The rest is history. And I promise to pick up this story again. Went on to re-record teams that we love. Red Bull Racing. I did it for the first time in 2022. There's already a lot for us to talk about. An update. Through Helmut Marko, Christian Horner would be the youngest team principal in Formula One history at 31 years old. Look at Christian Horner's baby face. Back in 2005, but don't worry, we'll get there soon. Under the guidance of Helmut Marko, the Red Bull Junior team was created before the team, meaning the driver program comes before it. This program, which is considered a grinding machine, people, we know, and which led someone to Formula One for the first time in the Jaguar team, which they would buy the following year in the person of Christian Kling. Austrian Dietrich Matezchitz, co-founder of the energy drink brand, had already heard about Marko in the Austrian motorsport scene and was slowly getting closer to him. When he decided to take the step of getting into motorsport, Marko was the obvious choice. But not just Marko, because Gerhard Berger, I don't know if you remember, he was also the head of Toro Rosso back in the 2000s. Under Marko's guidance, the driver program was created with a focus on the lower categories to train drivers who would then be handed over to the elite leagues in which Red Bull was involved. The first driver from the program who was going to make it to Formula One was Henrique Bernoulli. Did you know that Brazilian Red Bull wanted to put Bernoulli to race at Sauber, the team they were sponsoring and had a stake in? Peter Sauber, for his part, stood his ground and wanted to debut one of his cars with that of Kimi Raikkonen. Marko wanted Bernoulli. Peter Sauber insisted on Raikkonen, and there was no agreement. And then Red Bull sold its stake to Singh in another neighborhood. But to be fair, Bernoulli raced in Formula One with a seat at Arrows with Red Bull stickers. When Jaguar decides to leave Formula One, Bernoulli goes to Ecclestone and talks to Mateschitz. And he says, how about you buy a team in Formula One and bring two along? Because it was sinking. Minardi, fearing the loss of 4 cars with the exit of 2 teams, had Ecclestone resolve everything right there, internally. Marko is a controversial guy, and I suspect most of us wouldn't be friends with him. He has a blunt, straightforward way of speaking. Almost like Niki Lauda, but without the education and charm. He has been cancelled a few times for statements that were, to say the least, unfortunate. To be economical with words here, he even had one of those moments regarding Sergio Perez and us Latinos. But with all due respect to the pun, you can't deny that Marko has a keen eye for spotting talent. Besides 2 4-time champions, Christian Vettel and Max Verstappen, he also picked up race-winning drivers like Daniel Ricciardo, Pierre Gasly, and Carlos Sainz. At the moment I'm recording this video, if I'm not mistaken, 7 out of the 20 make up this grid, which will start the year 2025. Are they drivers? Red Bull. The 2 from Red Bull, both from Ricciardo, Max Verstappen, Liam Lawson, Zach Rajar, and Yuki Tsunoda. Even though Tsunoda is more of a Honda driver, the 2 from Williams, Alexander Albon and Carlos Sainz, and at Alpine, Pierre Gasly. And some of the drivers who went through Formula One and didn't stand out there are still very good and have won elsewhere. This is the case, for example, with Christian Buemi, Formula E champion, 4-time WEC champion, and 4-time winner of the 24 Hours of Le Mans. The same goes for Jean-Henri Quiverne, who was a Formula E champion, or Brendan Hartley, who has a solid career in endurance. But just from the well-known names of ours that made it to Formula One or almost did, my God, the list is huge. Sergio Peter Kimera, Antonio Felix da Costa, Daniel Kimi, who entered, and out went Jaime Alguersuari, Vitor Antonio Liuzzi, Scott Speed. As I speak here, the editor will show you the list, which is huge. It's really huge. There are names in there that you've probably never heard of and just fell by the wayside. Marko is now an important part of the internal war that erupted within Red Bull after Mateschitz's death, because he, Mateschitz, was the safety lock that kept the various factions within the team from fighting. With his death, Horner, tried to buy the team from the Thai side, the founders of the beverage manufacturer. The Austrian side, close to Marko, found out, and then the war broke out. But I promised to share that part in the re-editing of Teams We Love, Red Bull. These days, Marko has less power than he used to, but he remains very influential. So much so that in the week I'm recording this video, we released the news about Max Verstappen saying, "I'm very happy here in this team as long as Real Multimarca continues." Born in 43, he is therefore 81 years old. And to this day, he's a familiar face in the Formula One paddock at the 24 Grand Prix of the season. I, at half his age, already get tired just imagining all those trips. He has renewed his contract with Red Bull, so we will see him for a few more years. Will he reveal before leaving Formula One any more multi-champions? There have already been 2 comment down below. So that was another episode of Splash and Go on YouTube. I hope you all enjoyed it. Leave a like. It's free. It doesn't cost anything. It helps the channel a lot. Break for me. Break for us. I ask you to also leave us your Raipada. This new tool for you to showcase your mysterious algorithm and to like the channel and our videos. I always say here, and I will keep saying in 2025, that we have a monstrous engagement thanks to you. When I ask you to hit the like button, it's free. Hit it. We have more likes, more comments, and more hype than channels with 10, 15 times our number of subscribers because you all. If you want to receive notifications for each of our videos and the many contents that come out here all the time, we have channels on Instagram and WhatsApp. You join and start receiving notifications automatically. Don't take the risk with YouTube. I forgot to remind you because sometimes some of you write to me and say, you didn't make a video this week, I didn't get notified about anything, and I have to warn you, don't rely on it. In those notifications, YouTube forgets whether they mean to or not. So join our Telegram group, join our WhatsApp group, and finally, but not least important, our social media links are showing up here. TikTok, Threads, Twitter, Instagram. I have content all the time. It's not an exaggeration. The link is down there in the description, okay? So that's it. Thanks. And a big hug.